Well, the future Trunks arc is in the books, my friends. It is over, and boy do we have a lot to talk about in this episode of Dragon Ball Super. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video, and let me just put a quick disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I am doing this review after watching the subs on Crunchyroll. So for those of you who think I'm reviewing it raw, that's not true. I'm reviewing this with the Crunchyroll subs. So let's get started. So, starting off with the plot, Zamasu is pretty much cut in half as a result of what happened from last week's episode, and the weird thing about it is he's kind of talking to himself as he's being sliced in half. I thought that was a very creepy and weird scene. And all seems positive with, you know, the notion that Trunks pretty much wiped out Zamasu and everybody's pretty much congratulating him. We see a really cool, you know, intimate scene between Trunks and Mai as he's pretty much holding her and hugging her, and you know, everybody's pretty much celebrating and, you know, pretty much patting Trunks on the back for what he did. But typical Dragon Ball, just like during the Cell Games arc, Zamasu is not dead, just like how we all thought that Cell was dead, you know, when he pretty much exploded himself on King Kai's planet. And he resurrects himself into this talking, laughing cloud of destruction that's pretty much nuking everything around the world. And the weird thing about this weird Zamasu cloud element is that it actually carried out towards the present timeline, and I thought that was very weird. So Vegeta and Goku try to pretty much fight this thing, and the weird thing about it is that in this sense, the weird thing is their power is completely out of it because of the whole Vegito clash. So they're pretty much all used up, which is it makes a lot of sense because, I mean, obviously if they used up all that power to do the fusion, then obviously in their base forms they wouldn't have any power left. But with whatever little bit amount of energy they have left, Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta power up a triple Kamehameha Gallic Gun Final Flash to pretty much try and destroy this cloud, but it does absolutely nothing. And we see a scene afterwards where Zamasu is once again attacking the earth more. Everything is being wiped out into destruction. Master Roshi's house is nuked, so pretty much the turtle that was chilling on top of Roshi's house is now gone. If Roshi was still somehow magically alive, even though it was implied he was dead, he's now gone. Android 8 and the few survivors in the little tunnel behind him are all pretty much wiped out. And unfortunately, as a result of this, the people who helped Trunks and all of the survivors, you know, with his whole spirit bomb sword technique, they all pretty much die too. And this was a very sad scene as we see, you know, Zamasu killing the survivors. And I felt that we saw one of the most emotional scenes happen after this, where Mai pretty much loses her shit and she's pretty much going Rambo, you know, just firing, you know, into the sky trying to, you know, stop Zamasu. But you know, she's just firing and shooting away with all those tears, and you really felt how sad she was because all of what she and Trunks fought for in this entire future Trunks arc was to protect these survivors and whoever was left on Earth. And now that they're dead, it's literally like everything that they've dedicated their lives towards, especially Trunks, is now gone. You know, everything it's all wasted, because if they're dead, well, who else do you have left to protect? So, you know, Trunks stops her from firing. And, you know, in the process of this, they're pretty much contemplating that they really can't do anything about it. They're pretty much out of energy. They don't have any senzu beans. Goku checks his pocket and he notices that there's a Zeno button and he pushes it. But when he pushes the button, the present Zeno does not come to save him. It's actually the Zeno of the future Trunks timeline. And the weird thing about this is that Zeno has no idea who Goku is, so it would make sense he never bumped into him in the, I guess you could say, the future timeline, which makes sense. And Goku's like, listen, little Zeno, can you like nuke this guy up here? And Zeno pretty much nukes him. They go towards, I guess you could say, the future as a result of this, because Zeno's pretty much nuking him with everybody around. So Gowasu and the Supreme Kai get the hell out of there. Goku, Bulma, Mai, Trunks, Chi-Chi, everybody, they get the hell out of there. They go to the present, and we see something very interesting and unexpected happening after this. So after pretty much Zeno nukes Zamasu, we see that Goku wants to go get Zeno and talk to him. So what he does is he goes back to the destroyed future with Trunks, and in coming back, he gets Zeno and now brings him over towards where Zeno is on his domain in the universe. and he brings Zeno to pretty much play with himself, and that kind of takes back, by the way guys, not a perverted joke, he takes him to play with himself, but in essence, you know, Goku made a promise, you know, episodes ago that he would give him a friend, and Zeno pretty much has a friend in himself, because it kind of is weird that you're gonna play with yourself, but I guess that's how it kind of goes. And in the process of Goku doing all this, Whis reveals the Daishinkin, or the Grand Priest, is pretty much his dad. And obviously, if he's his dad, then that means he's also Vados' dad. And we go back to Earth, and we see a very interesting conversation that solves everything up here. So, they discuss what they're gonna do with future Trunks and Mai. The Earth is pretty much, you know, there's nothing left, you know. Obviously, Zeno's gone, and it was weird to me that Zeno never came in the first place, because I'm pretty sure Zeno would notice that all of the gods of destruction and all of the Supreme Kais of that universe would have been destroyed. Like, it didn't make any sense to me how Zeno, and I know I'm going back a bit, but it really doesn't make any sense to me how Zeno all of a sudden decides to now come, and everybody was dead and he had no clue about it, when this guy is literally like the ruler of the universe. That made no sense to me at all. You know, just putting that out there. But, you know, after all the Zeno business, they decide that what they should do is go to a point in time before all of this happened with Trunks and Mai. And in doing so, Trunks and Mai can pretty much prevent all of what happened before by using the Mafuba. And that all seems like a dandy plan, but Beerus objects to this, and he's like, oh, well, we're just gonna create another time ring. But Beerus is like, well, you created a time ring already by destroying the Zamasu, because that pretty much altered what the events would have been, because you gained self-awareness of what was going on. And I'm doing a whole timeline explanation on this, guys, on this whole discussion, guys. Don't worry about it. Qaaman's got you covered. Qaaman will go in depth about these three timelines. There's a Toyotaro version of the timeline, there's Toei, and there's also my own thing that I'm creating. So don't worry about that, guys. A timeline explanation will be coming soon to sum all this up. But pretty much, they want to go back in time before all this happens, and although it's weird that, you know, Mai and Trunks are going to see two versions of themselves, they want to go back to a time where, you know, all of the people that they wanted to protect were still alive. And, you know, obviously, if you're the husband in the relationship or the man in the relationship, Trunks listens to what his woman says, so they go off. But before all of this happens, I felt that there's some really interesting things we should talk about here. We see a very cool father-son moment between Vegeta and Trunks. Vegeta pretty much kind of like tries to punch Trunks. Trunks kind of grabs it, kind of like a high five to get out of there, as you see him smiling along with Vegeta. And I guess you could say the deepest moment we felt in this episode would be when Trunks is, you know, preparing the time machine. They're getting out of there with he and Mai. And we see a scene where Trunks is flying up in the sky with the machine, and Gohan flies up with him with Piccolo. And as you see Gohan flying up, you see Trunks looking at Gohan, and he pretty much sees, you know, future Gohan in him. And I felt that that was a very deep feeling, you know, and he feels like, you know, I couldn't save the universe on his own, you know, because obviously Zeno had to come in and save it. But it's kind of like he was reassured by, like, the spirit of future Gohan, you know, that, you know, he did what he needed to do, and he wishes him luck in the future. And I felt that that was a very deep scene. We really, truly felt Trunks' emotion in the moments. And now Trunks is just gonna go to the future so he could fuck the living shit out of Mai and produce some grandkids for Bulma. So that's where the episode ends. Now there's more to talk to about here, guys. I had to get all my thoughts on the narration out of the way. But to move on to the other things I wanted to talk about this episode, let's discuss some of the action sequences here, guys. So the action sequences were decent. There really wasn't much to talk about. I did think it was kind of cool how Zeno kind of just nuked Zamasu. But, you know, the other only scene we have is where Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta pretty much power up that triple Kamehameha Gallic Gun Final Flash, and it really didn't do anything, so there wasn't much to say here, so the action was underwhelming. The really cool action was in the previous episode. And to talk about some interesting details here, guys, I want to talk more about this Zeno button. Now, here's my thing, guys. One thing that kind of irritates me is I feel like this arc was a bit underwhelming when it comes to the Zeno button, because in essence, Goku could have pressed that Zeno button from the very beginning, and Zeno would have wiped out Goku Black and Zamasu from the get-go, and all of this stuff wouldn't have happened. You know, I was thinking that, and I predicted that Zeno was going to come and solve the situation. I predicted this because I said that they wouldn't have given Goku that button if they're not going to use it. But I just felt that it's like the whole point that the story was going towards was that Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks would have figured out how to do it without assistance. And then they make Zeno take, you know, Zamasu out anyways. You know, and it's like, if you had done that, all of the events would not have happened. And I felt that that was a horrible plot twist that they really screwed up in this arc. And to talk about another thing, as I mentioned before, guys, you know, a lot of you guys might be confused. I already explained this before, you know, obviously Geekdom did a video about this, but the whole time travel mentioning of Beerus and Mai and Trunks, if you guys want me to explain this one more quick time, the whole reason why he was saying a new universe was created, because remember, when Beerus created a new universe, that was caused because he killed Zamasu, which pretty much made our universe separate from the original universe where Goku Black, or Zamasu in essence, took Goku's body. So that meant Beerus split the main timeline that our characters, you know, had everything go right, different from the original timeline where Zamasu took Goku's body. That's pretty much what he meant, because Beerus destroyed the time loop because of self-awareness. I know it's confusing, guys, but please stay tuned in the future for more of this. And to talk about the memorable moments, guys, I think the most memorable moment would probably have to be two quick scenes where we see Mai losing her shit. And I think the biggest one would have to be where we see, you know, Trunks reacting to Gohan, because I feel like it was a really good twist going back to everything that Trunks stood for. Because if you really think about it, guys, future Gohan dedicated his whole life to protecting the future until he died. Trunks dedicated his whole life along with Mai to protecting the future, and now they have to leave. So in essence, everything, that scene was a lot more powerful than what you see in the episode. And I might make a separate video on this, because in essence, that was a signal that everything that Trunks did in his life was completely thrown away with that time machine and going into another universe. It's literally like everything has been so fucked up in my world that there's nothing left for me to go to, and I just have to start over fresh and just live a fresh life. And that's what the signal of seeing that future Gohan was. Future Gohan was the last connection that Trunks really had, or obviously along with Bulma, to that past. It was a part of what he stood for and what he grew up in that world. And I felt that that was an extremely deep moment. And to talk about the key discussion for today, guys, here's where you talk. Were you guys satisfied with this ending? I sure wasn't. I felt that it was cheap. I felt that the writing, it was just poor. Just to make all of this happen for one guy to just solve the problem in 2 seconds. It felt so underwhelming, guys, and I don't want to keep repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I don't want to get too repetitive, guys, and say the same thing. But man, that is so underwhelming, man. Like, this ending really hurt me. Like, even if you ended it with Trunks slicing Zamasu in half, I would have been more satisfied with that. Yeah, there were a lot of problems, like Vegito barely being in it, and, you know, all of the going back and forth just for Trunks to just get this random, you know, super spirit bomb technique and just slice him in half. Despite all that, I would have preferred it if Trunks just took out Zamasu by himself. Just like Frieza, you end him by slicing him in half. And I just felt that it was underwhelming. So overall, guys, I'm going to have to give this episode 2 stars. I thought the ending was horrible, and although the plot is going into another direction and it had a very happy ending in some elements, and along with also being a very sad ending at the same time, I just hated the writing, guys. I really did. So to go on to the predictions, guys, let's talk about the upcoming episode. So it looks like we're going to have some filler now. The preview is pretty much saying that everybody's going to have their wish granted. My prediction is that we're going to see a complete contrast to the previous saga, where we see a much more optimistic time where people are having their own greedy wishes, as we see King Kai trying to be revived because Goku made a promise for King Kai to be revived, even though it really doesn't matter because King Kai's already in the other world anyways. However, I think it is interesting that in the preview, we see Beerus pretty much crushing a gem-like object, and I feel like that might add, you know, somewhat of a twist to it, because obviously Beerus is probably going to be irritated about something being used with the Dragon Balls, because that's the only reason why he probably would have done that with the gem. Or who knows? We don't know. Maybe Beerus, we see him going towards Trunks' future for a quick scene or anything. We don't know, guys. We gotta wait for the next episode, but I do think Beerus' notion is interesting. So with everything else said, guys, this arc had great moments. This arc had poor moments. Overall, I'm gonna do a video with Geekdom on his channel. It's gonna be an arc review where we're gonna talk about everything that happened. And quite honestly, guys, just gotta tell you, the ending was disappointing. It's like you literally were doing so much right. There were some dips here and there, but you did everything right up until the point where you fucked up in episode 64 with that whole purple smoke, Black Goku and all that shit. And, you know, Trunks learning how to do the Mafuba with, you know, a cell phone. And then now you fuck up with just having Zeno come out of nowhere to just take everything out, when you could have done that from the very beginning and nothing bad would have happened. I mean, really, you should blame Goku for this. Blame Goku for not deciding to not only bring the actual Mafuba Demon Seal, and blame Goku for not pressing that button earlier. Yeah, I mean, that's really what caused all of this to happen. But with everything else said, guys, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys. And this was a long review, but it had to be said.